Every great marketer has been faced with this moment, an opportunity to exhibit bravery in the midst of uncertainty, or to take a risk on something they truly believed in. The Brave Marketer podcast features today's most progressive marketers and uncovers the brave marketing moments that have shaped their careers and the brands they've influenced. Hosted by Brave Software and Never Stop Marketing, and me, your host, Donnie DeVoren. Together we'll discover the decision-making process and mindset work that led to their success. You're listening to a new episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today we have a great conversation with Michelle O'Connor, and she's the VP of Marketing over at TaxBit. And I think it's a very timely conversation because it is tax season. Everybody got a little bit more time to file their taxes. And if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that you're into crypto, own some Bitcoin or ETH or some altcoins, and you're thinking about your taxes. And so we answer a lot of the questions about when you need to file when you're buying altcoins. And then we really get into the crux of it, which is the conversation about marketing and what crypto companies are allowed and not allowed to do and how to navigate that space. But before we hop into today's episode, we want to highlight our Brave pick of the week. So every episode we choose a brand that has run an ad campaign with Brave. And this week we're going to choose Upland. So if you're not familiar with Upland or if you haven't seen them on your push notifications or sponsored images, Upland is a gaming platform that blends the real world with a virtual world. And it's powered by blockchain technology. So Upland found that users acquired via Brave ads actually spent 3 times more than the users who were acquired via other channels like Facebook. And so that's just a testament that Brave ads work really well and that the users are valuable, that they're spending more on the gaming platform. To get into this week's episode, again, Michelle O'Connor, VP of Marketing at TaxBit. And just to give you a little bit of background about Michelle, she's really passionate about moving fast and driving community and mainstream adoption of the tokenized economy. She began her career working in New York public relations for luxury brands. And then in 2006, she founded a hybrid marketing agency bridging the gap between traditional media, public relations, social media, and community marketing. After years of running and building her own agency, Michelle joined Bitreserve, which is now Uphold, as one of their first marketing hires and an early adopter in the blockchain crypto space at Uphold. And actually, Uphold is one of Brave's partners to redeem your BAT, your basic attention token. And Michelle says that those early years were like the Wild West, and some of her favorite moments were navigating the unknown in the blockchain space, while crypto was working to improve the lives who were unbanked or underbanked. And now for today's episode of The Brave Marketer. Hi, Michelle. How are you doing today?
Hi there. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for joining the Brave Marketer podcast. We're excited to have you on. And in today's episode, we'll talk about your background and your brave moment and get a little bit into taxes. I know that taxes is not the most fun topic, but it's definitely timely because it's that time of year to file your taxes, and everybody got a little extra break with time because of the pandemic, so we can jump into that too. So why don't we just start by you telling us about your brave marketing moment?
Sure. So if we go back in time a little bit to early 2015, I had my own boutique marketing agency, working mainly with small businesses and helping them scale and grow. And then I had a recruiter reach out from a company at the time called Bitreserve. And she said, there's this really exciting opportunity. You were mentioned because of your approach to growth hacking community, and we'd really like you to come in for an interview. So I did some quick searching and it saw that it was Bitcoin and blockchain. And in 2015, these words were not top of mind. There wasn't all of the content we have now. And I went, well, sure, I'm never going to turn down an interview, but what in the world am I going to talk about having zero background, zero knowledge?
Right. And not many people did in 2015. That's like early on for blockchain and crypto.
So I did as much studying as I could and then went into the interview with the Bitreserve team. And their story was amazing. It's one of those moments where you look back in your career and you just have to make the jump. I really hadn't been looking, but after talking to the team and hearing the vision, I just left the interview thinking, I will regret this for the rest of my life if I don't make this jump. So I joined, and it was just a rocket ship. It was a lot of learning on my end. And at that time, it was getting steeped in the technical side as well as the community, and still getting past a lot of these preconceived notions of what cryptocurrency and blockchain technology was and the kind of negative attributions that it had. And before I knew it, I felt steeped in this kind of still Wild West world that we work in.
And were you an investor of crypto early on?
Yes, I still hold across quite a few different assets. Some alts will probably stay where they are forever because I thought they were interesting use cases and haven't taken off.
We all have our bag
Actually,
of shitcoins.
um, I actually was an early Brave user through Uphold's partnership with Brave. So I thankfully have a lovely stash of basic attention token and have vocally been an advocate of that token as well
Yeah.
for years. So
I mean, but anybody who put money in Bitcoin in 2015, that turns into a nice sum, which sounds like you did.
yep.
What can our audience that's listening to this now learn from that jump? Going into a new industry seems really scary, I'm sure, for some people. What advice would you give to somebody who is trying to make that decision?
I'm a big proponent of being informed of the risk you're taking, but taking risks across marketing. We have to do it every day, especially in this industry. So I welcome risk takers and frequently have people reach out, ask about getting into our space and what that looks like. And we'll remind them that just make informed decisions, do your research. Thankfully, now there's a lot on the good old internet to inform people a little bit more about the industry and just jump.
So tell us about your transition from Uphold over to TaxBit. How did that happen?
Sure. Mid 2020, I've been there 5.5 years and started having that question of what's next? What does it look like? Having worked with TaxBit for years, they were another partner of Uphold. I loved what they were doing. I've been a proponent of what they were doing because, as much as regulation might be an uncomfortable and frustrating part of the need for adoption, without regulation, this world and asset class won't be able to move forward. So I was the first marketing hire and have just been running beyond running since then. We've had a very busy 2021 and it's really just getting started.
And with a name like TaxBit, most users could probably guess what they do: tax services for anything crypto and Bitcoin. Can you share a little bit more about the company?
Sure. They were founded back in 2018. Co-founders Justin and Austin Woodward. Austin's a CPA, Justin's a tax attorney. So they really came at it from a very high level, theoretical, but also tangible. We need to solve this problem, and it's going to grow and be a bigger problem because crypto is viewed currently as a property asset class in the way it's taxed. So every transaction would be taxed. And there's just all this problem that they were like, this is just going to be a headache as this grows mainstream. What they have built has evolved into this amazing, I view it as an extension arm of any consumer who has crypto throughout the year should look at their TaxBit account before they execute a buy, sell, or trade. And the reason being, everyone I've spoken to kind of hides from taxes because they don't want to know. And then at the end of the year, you get a whammy and it's a disappointment or frustration or it caused a financial distress. There's a way to actually make conscious decisions throughout the year and build up some losses. So at the end of the year, you actually have losses to claim and that you can end up being owed money versus owing money, which is a really nice side of the coin, literally, to look at. Since we've been in a bull market now, it's been tricky to see the change in ebbs and flows if everyone wants to hold and they don't want to sell. But you can actually sell, realize the loss, and then buy it right back because crypto doesn't have wash sale rules. So there are things where there's a lot of education that I'm still very passionate about bringing to this space, helping people understand, no, there's a way you can actually really make this an advantageous extension of anything you're doing. And it's almost a little bit of gamification. At least that's how I've started to look at it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that you want to buy an altcoin. And so you have to buy, let's say, Ethereum or Litecoin to buy that altcoin. And then while you're holding it, just waiting to buy that altcoin, if Ethereum goes up and then you buy the altcoin, you have to pay taxes on the Ethereum
Exactly.
gain. And that's frustrating because you're like, I just wanted to buy I just wanted to buy some Dogecoin or whatever it is, but you got to buy something else to buy it. And yeah, but that makes sense too, that you may want to buy a new coin, but you're sitting on a little bit of a loss and you can take that loss and apply it towards the gains.
Absolutely. Bitcoin had a dip this weekend, and I saw everyone saying hold, whatever. And it's no, actually sell if you bought at the peak, realize the loss, and then buy it right back. So I'm really trying to get people to rethink this asset class and how they're using it, and get a little gamification in there so we can help people realize more losses and make more money.
Right. And so let's shift into marketing, being the Brave Marketer podcast. Tell us about the marketing that you're doing at TaxBit right now. How are you getting that message out about the gamification of the wash sale?
It's been really interesting because they were very stealth before I joined. They did very little marketing at all. They didn't really have an email nurture or anything. So I'm coming in with a blank slate, as it were, to realize and recognize, how do I help this community understand and embrace the software that we provide? And thankfully, having worked in the space for quite a few years, the concept of community, I realize how important it is. And I've built a network of influencers, fellow people who work at different exchanges and things like that, and said, hey, this is why I need you to understand, so you can help your community understand the importance of this product and what it is. So I've really tapped community first and education. From there, there's the traditional, if you look at ad spends and things like that, we're launching a Brave campaign soon, which I'm really excited about. And it's really just all non-traditional in the way that I market. The only traditional avenue that I'm doing is some ad buys basically on brand, because competitors were buying our brand name because we've had a lot of media recognition and just had a big 2021. That's the
Yeah,
only.
you mean like SEM on Google?
Yeah, exactly. And that's purely because we were getting a lot of traffic, especially after a Series A, and saw the opportunity to say, hey, okay, this is our sandbox, and we're going to stay here. Thank you. Future looking, there's going to be a lot of video, a lot of webinars, and a lot of interactive type content to help people understand throughout the year. This shouldn't just be a file your forms and you're done. You really should look at this as a year-round extension to consult.
Got it. And there's a lot of competitors in the space. That story of the corporate tax attorney or the CPA that's into crypto starts his or her own tax company. How are you differentiating?
Sure. So that's a great question. It's kind of cliche that this area of taxes has become the hot area of crypto, but it definitely has. Where we differentiate is really the product and the founders. So there's a consumer arm of the product, an enterprise arm of the product, and a government arm of the product. So consumer is what generally people think of most. It's the platform where you can look at the tax optimizer, you get your forms at the end of the year, you connect all your wallets. That's the product that most people are familiar with. We have quite a few exchange and wallet partners who we actually execute all of their forms for. So the tax forms, to make sure that they're compliant with the IRS, we're issuing all of those, as well as other features and products that aren't public facing, but ensuring that everyone's not only IRS compliant, but consumers at the end are getting the best and most informed documentation for anything tax related. And then if you look at the government arm, you see the mayor of Miami and the district commissioner of Miami are very pro crypto as an asset class. And there are other municipalities that are going that way in the US and rest of the world. So we work very closely with different bodies of regulations and governments to help them understand this new industry and what it means and how to approach this asset class to encourage adoption, but also make sure that there's compliance and everyone understands and there aren't confusing decisions, or anything that's put forward can be as clear as it can be.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And are you up against the same type of regulation or rules that other crypto companies are at when it comes to where you can market your services?
Yeah, it's interesting where, depending on the day, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And there's a lack of transparency in some of these rules or opinions on what you can run and what you can't, because we aren't selling an asset or a token. We don't fall considerably in that same tighter parameters of what can and can't be promoted.
Can you
But
share
still,
for someone who is, what rules are you seeing out there right now?
what I have seen more recently is they're prohibiting NFTs because that's a new hot space. And generally, what I've seen happen over the years is there is a new shiny object. If it's an NFT in 2017, it was ICOs and investment. Anywhere there is investment advice being given is where multiple platforms are really clamping down and prohibiting advertising. And generally, I think they're coming from a place of good because they don't want uninformed investors to make poor decisions or to get taken advantage of. Unfortunately, that means that businesses who have a real use case, who have a lot of followers, and are really just trying to grow are impacted because there's this blanket rule that just applies for everyone. I saw it when I was at Uphold for years, and it was really frustrating. So I think there's so much improvement that can be done there, but it's such a scalable issue that needs to be solved, which is why I traditionally just go community first, because word
Mm.
of mouth doesn't, you can't prohibit that. You can't clamp down. You can't say no. You can't say something's good or bad. It's really just someone's opinion. And if that person talks to 10 people, those 10 people talk to 10 people. It's that network effect that you can't clamp down or prohibit advertising.
Yeah,
In crypto world,
yeah. We spoke to Kevin Rose 2 weeks ago, and he was saying the same thing. Not necessarily about crypto companies when they advertise, but any smaller company that's an entrepreneur and you're doing your marketing, always start with the influencer marketing area, the community, because you can get a lot more bang for your buck, a lot more traction. Better to hire a small team that can reach out to a lot of influencers and affect the community rather than hiring that one person that's going to focus on your Google SEM and spend a boatload of money trying to compete for keywords when you're so small.
absolutely 100%. And I really believe the community effect and the idea of influencers, even though that word has a lot of definition to it and can be perceived different ways, the most powerful relationships that I have, having worked in this industry for quite a few years, was influencers and people in the space know who I am. If they had issues when I worked at Uphold, they knew that I was going to get in and help them solve it and could escalate. And I think that sweat equity as a person has parlayed over where they say, hey, you've mentioned TaxBit for years. Now you're there. We trust you. So we're going to explore this more. And it's just this kind of symbiotic relationship of people doing good to build the better good. And I'm really thankful for those relationships.
Yeah. And really not to plug Brave, but we have nearly 30 million users on the browser right now. And a good majority of them, 70%, are either buying or holding or about to buy crypto. So it's a great audience to advertise with. And when other marketers, and let's say you're an NFT marketplace or you're a single, person like the Beeple story trying to launch an NFT and get the next $69 million, we become a great place to advertise. Of course, we have our vetting process to make sure that we don't have scams and ICO scams or whatever it is. But once they go through the vetting process and they have to meet the $10,000 minimum for a month to advertise, then we can run it and we don't have those same type of regulations, which is what you were talking about.
No, and what you have built at Brave and having watched it grow over the years, it really is, in my opinion, industry leading, especially for any business that touches crypto or they're crypto adjacent, because there's already interest. There's for people that are using a privacy browser, and then they already have some exposure to tokenization, and which is what the bigger world is moving towards. So I think as far as any company that's crypto adjacent, utilizing your platform for an advertising perspective is the best way to go, because there's that you can't get without spending a ton of money on some of the other channels.
Yep, exactly. So let's talk about the future a little bit. Where do you think marketing in the crypto space is going? What are the opportunities and what do you think the challenges or the headwinds are?
So I think there's so much opportunity that it almost gets overwhelming sometimes, because a few years ago it was consumers and that's who we were marketing to. So it was a pretty small genre and you could get to know them and the different personas. Now it has just absolutely exploded. You have institutional investors, you have governments that are looking at CBDCs and other assets. You have NFTs, you have all of these different worlds that are entering digitization and tokenization at some channel. And speaking to all of them gets overwhelming at some point. So it's really identifying who you want to speak to and then not trying to boil the ocean, so to speak, with everyone. I envision a world where there will start to become more of a need for generalist marketers. I'm a big proponent of generalists. I think specialization is important, but someone who can get in and be agile, especially in early days for companies that are coming in and help get things moving foundationally, then find kind of their traction point and focus more there. And that's where, when I'm hiring, there are a few roles on my team that are very specialized, growth and SEO being one of them. But beyond that, I really look for a personality that's a go-getter, that likes autonomy, that's not afraid to take risks. I would rather have to ask for forgiveness on a risk that we took than not take it and stay conservative. So I think there's so much opportunity, and a lot of folks who are in traditional marketing roles now that might be getting a little boring or see all the fun stuff that we're doing on this side of the fence, jumping over, or not jumping over rather, because they don't have the experience in our space. It hasn't been around that long. So I always say, it doesn't matter if you don't know anything yet, you still know enough to know you want to know more. And that's where there's so much opportunity.
I agree. My cousin works for one of the largest banks out there, and he helps run the SEM team. And that's all they focus on. All they focus on is a Google search with a touch of Bing. And he knows it really well inside and out for so many years. But I think you're right. When you move into a smaller company, you become a Swiss Army knife. You have to learn everything, not just the SEM. And so I get it. When you're interviewing at a big company and it's for the SEM group, they want to see 10 years of SEM background, and they're very focused on that. They probably won't even hire you unless you have that SEM experience. But here in our world where crypto companies are not that size yet, you have to be a generalist. You have to know how to do everything and roll up your sleeves.
Yeah.
So it's great. And so I guess my last question for you as we wrap up is, who do you really respect on the marketing side? Who would you recommend that we have on this podcast to interview?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. There's so many people that I think that are just doing an amazing job. And let me find her handle because I follow her on Twitter. Aubrey over at Lolly. She runs their brand and really is the community and pretty much the face of Lolly. And I think she has grown that offering exponentially. They've been out a few years, and really whatever she's doing is so on brand, and she's really become synonymous with what they're doing. So I respect Aubrey. I think she's done an amazing job having jumped in and grown the brand and built some amazing partnerships.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was really fun interviewing you. And I look forward to seeing your results of your first test with Carlos, who will be managing that. And thanks again.
Thank you. And everyone has a few weeks left. So if you haven't filed your taxes, it's not scary. Just file them.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. Hopefully you liked that conversation with Michelle and you learned a little bit about crypto filing, how crypto marketers can and cannot market in our space. You heard a couple different plugs for Brave and our advertising platform. And I don't mean to do that, but just sometimes so naturally comes out in conversation. So I just feel like I need to. Anyway, if you like what you heard today and you're finding it valuable, it'd be really helpful for us if you just took 2 minutes and left us a review in either Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. Every review counts in helping us get our show into more ears. And on a final note, if you have a brand or product or service that you'd like to get in front of Brave's 30 million users, please do email us at adsales@brave.com. Make sure to let us know that you're a podcast listener, and that's going to unlock one of two perks. If your budget is under $10,000 a month, we will bump you up to the top of our self-serve waiting list. And if your budget is more than $10,000 a month, you qualify for a 25% podcast listener discount. So again, just email us at adsales@brave.com. And thanks again for listening. And for today's episode, our musical credit goes to my brother, Ari Devorin. And on the production side, we have Sam and Shez that have been absolutely amazing and making sure that these podcasts come to you every week and sounding flawlessly.